back to English for Writing Business Emails. My name is Brian Stewart, and in this video lesson, we're going over Unit 4. We're talking about tone. Now, this unit is divided into 3 different video lessons, and in this lesson, we'll take a look at situations in which you should adjust the tone of your business communication. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, let's take a look at the sample sentences on page 37. And of course, these sentences on page 37, they are reproduced for you here. And of course, this is on page 37 in the textbook, English for Writing Business Emails. If you haven't picked up a copy yet, please consider doing so. There are a couple of links below this video for you to purchase a book. And it will be easier for you to follow along with the lessons. Now, as you can see, these 4 sentences that are reproduced from page 37 here, they all have the same message. However, they vary in tone. For example, let's just go over a few of them. We don't need to go over all of them, but let's just take a look at number 1, for example. Number 1 says, I need you to approve my project. Then number 2 and number 3 are the same message, but using slightly more polite words. Number 4, if you look at number 4, my gosh, it's a very long sentence. Would it be possible for you to review the attached project and kindly consider it for your approval at your earliest convenience? Okay, it's maybe a little exaggerated here, but basically all of these 4 sentences have the same meaning. But what I normally ask students in a workshop is, which sentence is most polite? And students will say, well, number 4 is most polite. And I will say, which sentence is the most direct or could be a little aggressive? And they usually say number 1, of course, is the least polite and might be a little aggressive as well. But the important question is here, which sentence is the most difficult for learners of English? Of course, the sentence that is most difficult is number 4 because it has a lot more vocabulary. It has a lot more phrases in that sentence. Which sentence is the easiest? Of course, number 1. So that illustrates the point of this exercise. When we learn a new language, we learn the simplest forms first, obviously. The easiest vocabulary, the easiest sentence constructions. But it's very important to realize that those are not always the most polite or the most acceptable ways of communication. Sometimes I do get emails from my business contacts in Korea, and I'll be reading the email and I'll come across a sentence or two that is not really shocking, but it's just like, whoa, that's really aggressive. That's very direct. What's going on? Of course, I know that person. I've spoken with that person. Maybe I've visited them in their office and I know, look, this person, they're not that rude. It just sounds rude in the email because maybe they're not aware of the correct way to express that in English yet. And of course, I'm asking them to communicate to me in English. I'm sure if I wrote back to them in Korean, probably my language would not be as polite. I hope I don't shock them with my very simple and direct Korean, especially if I'm not using honorific titles or honorific language endings for my sentences. So of course it goes both ways. And that's what the idea of this unit is, to try to adjust our tone in English so that we strike a professional tone and that we make the other person feel good about receiving our written communication and understanding what it is that we're talking about. So let's go over some different ideas here. What I have on the next few pages, or actually on the next page, on page 38, are 6 sentences, or 6 sentences that might be taken from an email. And I'd like to discuss these with you in terms of, are they polite or impolite, and what's going on here, okay? Now again, emails can be casual or they can be formal. All of these sentences, there's nothing really rude in these sentences, but some are casual and some are formal. So let's take a look at each of these 6 sentences in turn and take a look at a few questions about each one. First of all, is the sentence casual or is it formal? And then, what is the audience? Who is the intended audience? Or what is the situation behind these sentences? And that will also help us determine whether to choose formal or informal language. Let's take a look. The first sentence here on page 38 is, Mike, could you pass the sales report on to me when you can? So of course I would normally ask my students, is this formal or casual? Formal or informal? And usually people will say, in this case, it's informal because we're using first name, right? Mike, could you pass, oh, that's kind of formal, but pass on is informal. I'll talk about this in the next video lesson. Also, when you can is more of a little bit of a casual expression. So this is a little casual. Who is the intended audience? A, someone in your company, or B, someone in another company. Who would this be more appropriate for? Well, many students will correctly say it should be A, someone in your company. That's who this is more typically for, this type of sentence. Why? Because when we look at a chart for audience and tone, when you determine what tone you're going to use, you have to think about the audience. In this case, we are talking about internal versus external communication. Internal communication is inside your company. If you are emailing someone on your team or in your department or even within your company, you're going to tend to be more informal than you would if you were emailing somebody who is outside your company or external. External would be outside your company. So if we think about audience and tone, remember that when you're emailing somebody inside your company, at least for most American and Western organizations that follow Western or American culture, it's not so important to be so formal. You can be informal, and many emails that are internal are informal. Usually when you email outside of your company, usually, not always, but usually when you email to somebody outside your company, you're going to be more formal. Okay, so that's what we're taking a look at here. Let's take a look at the next one, number 2. Thanks for sending the schedule. I'll get back to you as soon as I've looked it over. Is this formal or informal? How do we know which one? Well, there are a few clues in the language and the grammar used. First of all, we have thanks. Thanks is a little informal instead of thank you, right? And also we can see here a contraction. Contraction is when you take two words and you combine them to make one word. The two words are, of course, I will. We contract them for I'll. Now, when I was in school, my teachers always told us that you should not contract when writing formally. For formal written purposes, whether it's a business letter or an academic paper, do not contract. If you're writing a casual email, you have no problem. Contraction is very common, and it's fine. There's no worries with that. But for formal emails, do not contract. So this is informal. And a couple more things. Get back to someone. That is an informal expression. I'll explain more in the next video lesson about this. And of course, we see another contraction, and look it over. That is also a informal expression. It's actually a phrasal verb. And we'll talk about those, like I said, in the next lesson, the next video lesson. So this is informal. Who would it be more appropriate for? A new client you have just contacted, or B, a client who you know well. Which one do you think it would be more appropriate for? Well, yeah, I would suggest B, a client who you know well. Why? Because in this case, we're talking about the difference between old contact and new contact. If you're emailing someone that you know very well, you've had a lot of previous communication with them, you're going to tend to be more casual than formal. But if you're contacting someone that for the first time, or you've just contacted them a few times, or maybe you don't contact them very often, that would be considered a new contact, and you should be more formal with them. And this is an interesting point. especially in American culture, when people email each other for professional reasons and it's external, right? They're emailing outside their company, they will be formal the first few times that they email each other. And I noticed this on a recent trip to the US. I was talking to a financial advisor, and I went to her office, and she was explaining the different investment plans that they have on offer. Came back to Korea, and she was emailing me, and she would write, "Dear Mr. Stewart," and I would write, "Dear Ms. Harper," back. And then she wrote, "Dear Mr. Stewart," "Dear Ms. Harper." And then about the third or fourth email, she wrote, "Hi, Brian," and I wrote, "Hi, Linda," back to her. So Americans tend to do this quite often, right? We start off formally calling people Mr. or Ms., and then after about 3 or 4 emails, we suddenly switch to informal, just first names. And that's very common. My advice to students, especially in Korea, is just follow your contact's lead. If they're contacting you and they're using, formal address, formal salutation, "Dear Mr. Lee," "Dear Mr. O," or "Dear Ms. O," and then they suddenly change to "Dear Sung Ho" or "Dear Kyung Min," then you can follow that lead and just use their first name back. Now, this is important too, because as you know, business is all about relationships. A large part of business is building relationships. And of course, when you first contact someone, you want to be respectful. You want to use professional, polite language. But as you get to know them, as time goes by, you want to close the distance between you a little bit more so that you have a more friendly relationship, and so that you start using more casual techniques in your email. Of course, not being aggressive, but being casual is fine, because casual is also friendly. Now, something that I write on the board, I say informal. When we think about informal, we can say informal is casual. Sure, some people might think that it's impolite or even rude, right? If you're too casual, especially when contacting someone for the first time. Formal, of course, we normally associate with polite. Okay? But there's another dimension going on, right? Another dimension, informal, can also be close, right? Close relationship. What is the opposite of close? Of course, that's distant. Distant. Or you could also say cold, right? We can put those here too if my pen cooperates. That's supposed to be distant, okay? You could also say it's a little cold, right? Formal language is a little cold, whereas informal language can be warm and friendly. So this is an important thing to keep in mind, right? You don't want to be too informal when you first contact somebody, because that could be taken as rude or aggressive. On the other hand, when you get to know someone, you want to close the distance, right? You don't want to keep that distance. If you're continually formal with someone, you're being distant, you're being cold, right? As you get to know that person, you want to get closer, you want to get warmer with them, so you're going to use more casual language. And that's what we're talking about with old contact versus new contact. That's an important thing to remember. Okay, let's look at number 3. Number 3 is, due to scheduling issues, I regret to inform all of you that, and it was a very long sentence, so I didn't put it all on the slide here, but in the book it's very long, right? I regret to inform all of you that the meeting for next Monday has been rescheduled for the following week, Monday, April 12th, at the same time and place. I sincerely regret any inconvenience this may cause. Is that formal or informal? Obviously, it's quite formal. We're using a lot of formal language here. Due to instead of because. I regret to inform you that. That is a formal expression, right? I sincerely regret any inconvenience. This is formal language. So, who is it more appropriate for? A, from the head of a department to all employees in that department. Or B, from one engineer to other engineers at several different companies. Well, you probably would choose B, from one engineer to other engineers at several different companies, because you're thinking, oh, this is external communication versus internal. Yeah, that's true. But we also have another dimension going on here, and that is down direction versus lateral or up direction. Remember, A was from the head of a department to all employees in that department. When the manager or the boss sends an email to all employees that are working for him or her, that is down direction, and of course there's no need to be formal. I don't know if you have a boss who would email you or your team or your department in such formal language, right? I regret to inform all of you. No, he or she would probably write, "Hello everyone, unfortunately, da 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 da," and then they wouldn't use such formal language, right? But lateral, what is lateral? Lateral is across. If you're in one position in an organization and you're communicating with someone in the same position, in the hierarchy, that is a lateral move. Whether it's in your company or in another company, that's lateral communication. Of course, if you're communicating up in your organization, you're writing an email to your boss or your boss's boss or to the CEO of the company. Then, of course, you will be much more formal. And that's important in some organizations, of course. So, depending on the direction of your communication, you will choose between formal language or informal language. Let's take a look at another case. Okay, number 4. Can you send me some samples of your latest cosmetic products? Is that formal or informal? Well, can is usually regarded as informal. Could would be more formal. Send me, that's a little informal. Of your latest cosmetic products, very simple. It's very direct. It's a little informal, isn't it? So, what situation is this more appropriate for? A, from a potential customer to a rep or representative in the marketing department of a cosmetics company. Or B, from a potential customer to an IT tech at a cosmetics company. So basically the same idea, except one email is to the marketing representative. The other email would be to an IT technician working at that same cosmetics company. Now, I hope that you have chosen A, because why? What's going on here? Well, here I'm trying to illustrate to you the difference between routine requests and non-routine requests. Someone who works in the marketing department of a cosmetic company, it's their job to send samples. It's their job to answer requests from the general public. That's their job. It's what they do routinely. It is not the job of an IT technician to send samples. That's not their job. That would be a non-routine thing for that person to do. So, the example, I was trying to think of a different example, but let's say that you're asking somebody to do something that is not normally part of their job. Maybe it's not their job to help you prepare a presentation, but their department has information that you need. So you send them an email asking them for their help in preparing your presentation. It's not their job to help you. So you would, of course, use more formal language in making that request. Of course, if you're emailing somebody whose job it is to help you prepare your presentation, then you wouldn't have to be so formal because that is their routine. That is what they normally do. So that's the difference between a routine request or a non-routine request. Obviously, if you're asking somebody to do something that they don't normally do or that is not part of their job, your level of formality will go up a lot. Okay? Could you please possibly help me if it is at all convenient for you, right? Something like that. Okay, something like number 4 that we saw at the beginning of this lesson. Okay, let's do another one, number 5. Number 5, in response to your email received this morning. And the rest of it goes, in response to your email received this morning, June 15th, we do offer international shipping. Now, is that polite or impolite, casual or formal? This is formal, in response to your email, and then saying the date of the email. That's formal technique, right? And then we do offer international shipping, using do to emphasize that we do it. That's a formal technique. So this is a formal sentence using formal language. So who is it more appropriate for, A or B? A is from a sales representative to an overseas customer, or B, from a sales rep to a new hire trainee in another department. Don't call them a freshman employee. I think that's a little Konglish. We would say new hire, or a trainee is someone who is being trained on the job. A new hire who is learning the job is a trainee. And our new hire. New hire is somebody who is newly hired. So which one would it be more appropriate for? Well, of course, we can see that it would be more appropriate for A, from a sales representative to an overseas customer. Probably the overseas customer sent an email, do you offer international shipping? And the sales rep would say, in response to your email received this morning, yes, we do offer international shipping. That would be appropriate to an overseas customer, right? Not to a new hire trainee in another department of your company, because it's, even though it's not in your department, it's still in your company. It's considered internal, and it's a new hire trainee. They would think, wow, this is a really formal company. I asked them if we offer international shipping, and they gave me a very formal response. It'd be a little bit strange. Okay, so this is an example of internal versus external. It's kind of a little bit quick review, but of course an overseas customer is external, right? So that would be more formal. If you're writing to a new hire trainee in your company, that's internal communication. No need to be so formal. As I said, that trainee would feel a little strange getting such a formal reply. They're both new contacts, right? The new hire trainee and the overseas contact, so that's not really an issue here. But another issue is down direction versus lateral or up direction, right? Down direction, if you're writing to somebody who's a new hire trainee, they're a lower position than you, it's not so important to be so formal. Lateral or up direction, the customer's king. So you think that the customer is always in a higher position, right? Treat them with respect. The customer is always king. So we can consider that as up direction. So there are a couple of different things going on there. But you can see how this language, you would choose the language depending on who your audience is. But you also choose the language depending on the situation. Let's take a look at number 6. Number 6 reads, I regret to inform you that our VP of Sales is out of the office. Let's see what I wrote here. Yeah, I regret to inform you that our VP of Sales, who is handling this account, is out of the office until early next week. We sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. Is this formal or informal? It's quite formal, right? I regret to inform you that. We see that expression again. Who is handling this account? We sincerely apologize for. These are formal expressions. So what's going on here? Would this be more appropriate for A, a rejection, or B, an approval? Or what is it, basically? It is, of course, as we can see, I regret to inform you that it is a rejection. So it's not just audience, it's also situation. If you have a positive response, you're responding to somebody in a positive way. You don't have to be so formal. Sometimes people are formal, sure, that's fine, Oh, we are happy to inform you that, or we take great pleasure in informing you that. These are formal expressions for good news. But usually when you have negative news, you're going to be more formal, because being more formal, being more polite, kind of softens the bad news, right? It's more appropriate to use formal language for responses that are negative in content or negative in nature. So these are the different situations, or these are different things that you should consider before writing your email. Am I writing to somebody outside my company? Am I writing to somebody who is in a higher position than me, whether in my company or in another company? Am I asking them to do something that is part of their job, or is it not part of their job? Am I giving them a positive response or a negative response? And of course, all of these things combine. It's not just one thing. I mean, you could be writing to somebody outside your company who you've known for a long time, and you would probably be more informal, right? As opposed to a new contact, especially outside your company. If it's a new contact on your team, you probably wouldn't be so formal, because if you wrote to them very formally, that person might feel, whoa, what's going on here? This team or this company is really formal. And so it can seem strange both ways, right? You can get emails that are way too formal and you're thinking, whoa, what's going on here? Or you can get emails that are too informal and think, whoa, who is this guy? Why is he writing so informally to me? And so, it works both ways. Carefully consider the audience, who you're writing to, why you are writing, and what is the purpose of your communication. Those are important things when choosing what language to use. Now, this is a slide I also like to show to my students because it illustrates that there are actually 3 different levels of formality in your communication. There's very formal, the highest formality that you can think of. Especially think of government documents or legal documents that you may have received, or maybe you work in the government or you work in a law office. Obviously, you're used to writing very high level vocabulary, very polite expressions, very complicated or complex phrases and grammatical sentence structures to show a very high level of formality in your writing. That's appropriate at the government or legal level. Now, for most business people, you don't have to be that formal, right? You still are formal, right? You're in this range. But for most business people, you're kind of in between this range here, right? You want to be professional, you want to be formal, but as I said before, you also want to start using or blending casual techniques into your writing to get to be more friendly, to be more casual. All right? You're maybe not friends, but you want to become more friendly to each other, because a lot of business is about establishing close and warm relationships between the people involved. So most people are concerned with this area here. You want to be semi-formal. Formal at the beginning and then move towards casual. But you don't want to get too casual. You don't want to become too informal, right? Because again, you're maybe not friends. If I'm emailing a friend, obviously I'm using different language and a different style of salutation than if I'm emailing someone with whom I work with. Even if I work with them closely, yes, sometimes it's very similar, but there's still a little bit of a more professional tone, I notice, to my emails to people with whom I work, as opposed to just casual friends. Okay. Now, of course, you do want to avoid, for business purposes, avoid using slang. Slang is like the cool language that the new generation is using. And, I've heard some interesting examples in Korean too. My business students will also say, "Oh yeah, the new generation, they're coming up with different ways to say things." That occurs in every language. And of course, vulgar language, absolutely not. You would never use that for business communication. Vulgar is like 나쁜 말, right? It's bad words or language that is not accepted in social situations, okay? Like I said, most of our time we are going to be here for our business communications and for our business emails. Now, why is this important? Well, of course, and I've touched upon this already, but just to review, you want to give the recipient of your email, the person who receives your email, you want to give them a professional impression of you and your organization. Now, it's important also to consider, I didn't put it on this page, but written communication is simply that. It's only written communication. And I think I mentioned this in a previous lesson. The person who reads your email, they cannot see your body language. They cannot see your facial expressions. They cannot hear the tone of your voice. All they have is the word on the page. So if you want to make a good impression, you should choose formal professional language when writing that email. Of course, you want to give them a good impression. And another reason is, of course, you want to help the recipient feel good about helping you. A lot of emails, we write emails because we request that someone do something. We don't want to be too direct. We don't want to be rude, because they will think, whoa, I need to send you the file by Friday. Why do I need to do that? No, could you please send me the file by Friday? Not you need to send me the file by Friday, right? So we want to make the recipient feel good about helping you, of course. And of course, like I said, business is about relationships. We want to project warm, friendly feelings. So we need to understand how to switch our tone from formal to informal. And that is kind of the introduction into Unit 4. And in the next lesson, what I want to do is I want to give you at least 8 techniques. We'll take a look at 8 different techniques for switching your tone from formal to casual, or from casual to formal, to accurately, to precisely match the situation that you find yourself in, whether it's emailing someone you don't know or asking somebody to do something that may be part of their job anyway. Whatever the situation is, you should be able to determine what level of language to use, and also how to change tone. And we'll take a look at that in the next lesson. Okay, well, that's it for today. Thanks for studying with me as always. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you are notified when the next video is posted, or if it's already been posted, you can easily find all the videos that are relevant on the same playlist so that you can just click to the page that you want to study. And of course, if you have the book, remember you have the QR codes, so you can just scan that in and it'll take you right to the video lesson for those pages that we talk about. Okay, well, that's it for today. See you in the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.